Welcome back to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today we're jumping into some material you sent over. Looks like an article on a recent Microsoft security update.
That's the one. It's about Microsoft Entra Connect Sync, and specifically a pretty big change in how it talks to Entra ID.
Right, how it authenticates. Moving away from, well, the old way of doing things.
Exactly. Less familiar, maybe, but definitely more modern and secure.
So our mission today is to really unpack this. What is the change? How does the tech actually work now? And I guess, why is this so important for folks managing those hybrid setups?
Yeah, the key thing isn't just that it's changing, but understanding why. It's this move, away from passwords towards using certificates and application identities that really boosts security.
Okay, let's get into it. The article mentions the big shift. So passwords are out.
Yeah.
What's the actual, fundamental difference in the authentication process?
Okay, so at its core, it's about replacing the old method. Entra Connect Sync used to use a specific user account, right, with a username and a password to log into Entra ID. That's being swapped out for an application-based system, an app identity.
So that service account,
Yeah.
the MSOL account or whatever it was called, the one you had to manage the password for,
Yeah.
that's going away.
Exactly that one. That account, its password, has always been a potential, weak spot. This new way, which needs version 2.5.3.0 or higher, gets rid of that password completely. It uses an application identity instead.
Which brings us to the why. I mean, why now? People have used passwords for syncing for ages. What makes ditching it such a big deal right now?
Well, think about the risks. If someone got hold of that service account password, maybe through guessing or phishing or just poor management, they could potentially mess with your sync process.
Yeah.
This change just cuts off that whole avenue of attack, removes that specific vulnerability.
So it's not just a vague, it's better, it's targeting a known risk with the service account credentials.
Precisely. It shuts down those specific password-based risks for automated accounts. And, it fits perfectly with Microsoft's big push towards passwordless everything and that zero trust mindset where you don't inherently trust anything.
Okay, makes sense. So if the password's gone, what's replacing it? How does this application identity prove it's legit? What's the tech?
Right. The tech behind it is pretty standard but effective. It uses something called the OAuth 2.0 client credential flow. And the key part is it secures that flow using certificate credentials.
OAuth with certificates.
Yeah. So think of it less like a user typing a password and more like the Entra Connect Sync application itself, showing Entra ID, a digital certificate to prove who it is.
The app shows its ID card, basically, instead of whispering a password.
That's a good way to put it. It's a cryptographic proof of identity. Entra ID checks the certificate, verifies it's trusted, and lets it in. Much harder to fake or steal than a password hash.
Okay, so the old connector count is out, this app identity framework is in. What does an admin actually have to do to set this up?
Is it complex? Well, instead of creating and managing that user account password, you now need to go into Entra ID and create what's called a single-tenant third-party application registration.
Right.
This app registration represents your Entra Connect Sync instance. You give it the permissions it needs, and then you link it to a certificate for authentication.
Single-tenant third-party application. Just to clarify, that means an app object in your own Entra ID tenant, representing the sync tool, not some external thing.
Exactly. It's an identity for your sync tool, specific to your organization's Entra ID tenant. You then grant that app identity the permissions needed for sync.
And managing certificates, that can sometimes be a headache. Does Microsoft help with that part? Are there options?
Yes. Thankfully, they've provided a few ways to handle it. The source outlines 3 main approaches.
Okay, what are they?
First, and this is the one they recommend, is managed by Microsoft Entra Connect. Basically, the Entra Connect software handles everything for you.
Everything, like creating it, renewing it.
Yeah, creation, automatic rotation before it expires, even deleting old ones. It keeps them in the current user certificate store on the server where Connect is running, takes a load off the admin.
That sounds like the way to go for most people, I'd imagine.
Probably. It definitely simplifies things, but then you also have bring your own application BYOA and bring your own certificate BYOC.
For more control.
Right. If you have, say, an existing key KI infrastructure or really strict policies about certificate management, these let you use your own app registration or provide your own certificate. But obviously that means more manual work for you.
Gotcha. And do the certificates themselves have specific requirements, like key size or algorithm?
They do. The source mentions a key length of 2048 bits using the RSA key algorithm and SHA-256 for the key hash algorithm. Pretty standard stuff for strong certs these days.
Okay. Now, the article also talks about adding another layer of security, something called TPM, Trusted Platform Module. What's that about?
TPM. It's a dedicated security chip, like a tiny, secure vault, usually built right onto the computer's motherboard.
And why does Microsoft care about it for Entra Connect Sync? What extra security does it give this new certificate method?
This is where it gets really good from a security standpoint.
Yeah.
If your server has a TPM and it's enabled and used, the really sensitive stuff like generating and storing the private key for that authentication certificate,
Yeah.
that happens inside the secure boundary of the TPM chip itself.
So the private key isn't just like in a file on the disk or floating in memory where malware might grab it.
Exactly. It's protected by hardware. Even if the server's main operating system gets compromised somehow, getting that private key out of the TPM is incredibly difficult. It provides a hardware root of trust. Much better than software-only protection for those keys.
That hardware isolation makes a ton of sense for something this critical. Okay, so if someone wants to check where they stand now or plan the move, how do they see what method their current Entra Connect Sync is using?
There's a PowerShell command for that. You run get 8 sync enter connector credential on your sync server.
Get 8 sync enter connector credential. Okay.
Yeah, it'll output the connector identity type, telling you if you're still on the old user account or if you're already using the new application identity.
Simple check. And if you do want to migrate, what are the prerequisites? What do you need?
Okay, you need Entra Connect version 2.5.3.0 or newer, obviously. You'll need an account in Entra ID with at least the hybrid identity administrator role to do the app registration part.
Makes sense.
And on the Active Directory side, your domain controllers, or at least the environment, should be running Windows Server 2016 or later. There might be some underlying OS dependencies.
Few things to tick off the list then.
Yeah.
Are there specific PowerShell commands mentioned for the migration itself or managing it later?
Yeah, the source calls out a couple. Add Entra application registration is involved in setting up that new app identity in Entra ID.
Right.
And importantly, there's invoke 80 sync application credential rotation. That's the one you'd use to handle certificate rotation, especially if you need to do it manually for some reason.
Okay, speaking of rotation, with that recommended Microsoft managed option, how seamless is the automatic rotation? Does it just happen?
Pretty much, yeah. When you use the Microsoft managed way, Entra Connect has built-in maintenance tasks. These tasks regularly check the certificate's expiry date. When it gets close, say within 150 days, it automatically kicks off a process to generate a new certificate and switch over to using it, all before the old one actually expires.
That sounds way better than getting alerts that a service account password is about to expire and scrambling to change it everywhere.
Oh, absolutely. But it does still give you warnings. If a certificate is getting within that 150-day window, it logs an event ID 1011, just so you're aware.
A heads up.
Exactly. And if something goes wrong and a certificate does expire, you'll get an error, event ID 1012, and authentication will likely fail.
And if you needed to force a rotation, maybe for policy reasons, or if you use the BYOC option,
that's where invoke 80 sync application credential rotation comes in again. You can use that command and tell it which specific certificate to rotate using its SHA-256 hash.
Got it. So where does this whole feature stand right now? Is it fully rolled out? Is it the default?
According to the source, it's currently in preview.
Okay. So testable, but maybe not GA everywhere yet.
Right. It lets organizations try it out, kick the tires, see how it works in their environment before it becomes, the standard or even mandatory way.
And stepping back, how does this specific change fit into the bigger Microsoft identity picture?
Well, it's definitely part of their broader push to modernize hybrid identity. It lines up perfectly with moving towards zero trust, getting rid of passwords where possible, and using stronger, more modern authentication like certificates. It hardens that critical link between your on-prem AD and Entra ID in the cloud.
Makes sense. The source also mentioned something about a future recommendation, something beyond just updating Entra Connect Sync.
It did. It points out that while this update is important for securing existing Entra Connect Sync setups, Microsoft's longer-term recommendation for customers who are eligible is actually to look at migrating away from Entra Connect Sync entirely.
Oh, to what?
To Microsoft Entra Cloud Sync. That's positioned as their more modern cloud-native synchronization solution going forward.
Interesting. So this certificate update for Entra Connect Sync is a crucial security step now, patching a known vulnerability, but the future strategy might be cloud sync altogether.
That seems to be the trajectory, yes. This fixes a problem today for the current tool, but Cloud Sync is where they're investing for the future of synchronization.
Well, that was definitely a deep dive. It's pretty clear this move to application and certificate-based auth in Entra Connect Sync is a significant security win, getting rid of those risky service account passwords.
Absolutely. And understanding this helps you see, the direction security is heading for these hybrid environments. It's a key trend.
So, thinking about this update is important now for sure for anyone using Entra Connect Sync. But how does it fit into that bigger picture we just touched on? The whole industry moving away from passwords, Microsoft pushing towards cloud-native tools like Entra Cloud Sync.
Yeah.
If you're managing a hybrid setup, what does this mean for your strategy long-term? Is upgrading Entra Connect Sync just patching things up for now? Or is it a step on a longer path towards maybe eventually using Cloud Sync anyway? Where should you be aiming?
That's the big question, isn't it? This is vital for today, but you need to be thinking about what your identity infrastructure needs to look like tomorrow.
Definitely something to consider. Thanks for joining us to unpack all this from the source material.
My pleasure. Good discussion.